Hello, you guys. I'm Elizabeth from Elizabeth's Oracle. Thank you so much for joining me today and welcome. We are going to be talking about the Sun through Gemini cycle for 2019, and it's huge. This is a really big one. If you are a Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Pisces, this one is really going to impact you. And if you think you're a cardinal and this one has nothing to do with you, think again. There are huge aspects going along. Mars is traveling through Cancer, churning things up, and some big oppositions are going to happen during this cycle for the cardinals. So I'm going to talk about all of those. First, what I do is I walk you through the charts. Here are the start times for the overview section, and then in the interpretation section, I kind of expound on it and try to help you understand the meaning and give you a little more depth and go into which trends are really big. And then the resources is just freebies or things, other things that you can find out about astrology news and resources. So thank you again for tuning in, and let's jump into some charts. Okay, if you'll excuse the paper rattling, I'm going to walk you through some charts. You'll see them on the screen, and I'll be shuffling papers and looking at my notes. So, first chart is always for the day that the sun goes into the sign, but I'm going to do something a little more unusual this month. This is the day that the sun and Mercury go into Gemini, but I pulled a chart for a little later in the day because this is also when we have a big aspect to Neptune. Neptune will be playing a big role all cycle. It's going to be very involved. So pay attention to Neptune during this cycle. As usual, I'm doing the colors where your earth signs are in the green, your water are in the blue, your fire are yellow, and your air signs, which is what Gemini is, are in the gray. You see that the sun and Mercury have just entered Gemini. Then you see that trine there with Neptune in Pisces trining the North Node. So this is a nice aspect. The North Node's been very significant all year. I'm going to talk about that in part 2, but very important thing for you to notice in chart 1. And the other big thing to notice is look at how many things are at 18 to 22 degrees. That 18-degree thing, of course, is where Neptune and the North Node and South Node are, because the North Node and South Node are always exactly opposite. But you see a lot happening. Pluto and Saturn are moving backwards. Jupiter is moving backwards, and there's a lot coming up around those degrees. So again, if you have a chart, pull it up and look and see what is 5 degrees either side of 18. So it'd be about 13 to 23 degrees because that's about to get activated. All right, let's move to chart number 2, which tells the big story of this cycle. This is where Venus moves into Gemini. And I know a lot of you are like, oh, what's sweet little old Venus gonna do in Gemini? Seems so sweet and innocent. Well, Venus, along with everything else in Mutable, is about to set off massive mutable T-squares. So when we look at this chart, across from Venus is Jupiter. Venus and the Sun will each be opposing Jupiter as they make their way through Gemini. We don't have to worry about Venus too much in this chart. It's just that in this chart, Venus moseying on into a mutable sign is about to really help activate some things that are set and building. So Neptune, of course, 90 degrees away, is just getting ready to square that Gemini Sun. That's going to happen on June 9th. And then on the 10th, the Sun is going to be in direct opposition to Jupiter. So we're going to have a Sun-Jupiter opposition, and that's the straight line. But anytime you see something intersected at 90 degrees, such as Neptune, that creates our squares. And interestingly enough, if you look at the top of this chart, and that right just over on the right hand side near the top is the moon in Virgo, and we think, oh, Virgo's so sweet, they're and Virgos are sweet. However, we're making the 90-degree squares, and that moon This is the chart for June 8th. That moon goes through Virgo, takes it 2 days to move through a sign, 2.5 days. So it is also going to be activating the T square. So that sweet little old moon and sweet little old Venus are about to start a firestorm that continues through the 9th and 10th and really the next 2 weeks, because when we move to the next chart, da, 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 da. This is our big chart for our second of 3 Jupiter squares to Neptune. Big deal. They're happening all year, so it's a big theme that we are dealing with, but it's very important for you to notice this, because anytime we have one of the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto at play, we're dealing with some big energies, and they don't just happen for the day. They are talking about something that builds. So that week before, when Venus went in there and started that T square, also you'll notice in this chart we are right before a full moon, and you can tell because the moon is in Sagittarius next to Jupiter. So Jupiter's already expansive. The moon is amping it up, about to be full on the 17th of June. Massive energy for the mutables, and of course the squares causing push come to shove. This is like choice points and things that you got to figure out. The other thing to point out about this chart, though, we're going to get into it in the next chart a bit more, though it's not just the mutables. Look at all the tension with Mars going in opposition to Pluto and Saturn in Capricorn. I'm going to bring up some dates in part 2, but there's a lot of tension happening with the cardinals, and boom, big full moon on the 17th, and we get to the 18th, chart number 4. This is our second Saturn sextile to Neptune, and I'll explain what that means in part 2. But again, we're dealing with Neptune, which I've said was going to be a big player in this cycle, and we're dealing with Saturn and all that Capricorn energy. I see this as one of our more benevolent things, but there's a lot of tension with the cardinals. So on the 14th, Mars had a direct opposition to Saturn. On the 16th, we saw it was Mercury opposing Saturn. And then we get to the 19th, the day after this, and both Mercury and Mars have a direct opposition to Pluto. So no little thing. So not only do we have all that mutable squaring building, but we have quite the show going on and quite the tense point between the cardinal signs. So big full moon, 17th of June, but again, building the week before it, really about 10 days before it, when Venus goes into Gemini, and building after. So let's do chart number 5. Things I want you to notice about chart number 5. Now this, I always finish with the day the sun goes into the next sign, and normally I leave it there because my job in these videos is just do the sun cycle. However, I would be remiss in my duties as a YouTube astrologer to not give you the heads up for everything that's sort of continuing in that I need to kind of tell you about, because it's part of the mutable story and it's part of the cardinal story. So in this chart, the sun has slipped into Cancer, but joined forces with Mars and Mercury. Mercury, you wouldn't be able to tell by the chart, but if you know your astrology, Mercury is just hitting the shadow point of his next retrograde in Cancer. And we are getting ready, we're coming closer to is the year's next solar eclipse in Cancer, July 2nd. So again, it's like we are being left with a lot of tension in the cardinals. But let's not forget about our mutables, because when you look at this chart, if we go back to the mutables, Venus is getting up to 15 degrees of Gemini, and we look across the way, where is Jupiter moving back at 18 degrees. I told you 18 was going to be a big number this cycle. And so those two are about ready to clash and have their direct opposition. And if you look at the moon, seems so innocent, just hanging out in a fellow air sign of Aquarius in this chart. Well, of course, the next sign it moves on to is Pisces. So we get another mutable T square. with that moon and Neptune. So Venus is going to square Neptune on the 22nd, being exaggerated by that moon, or that energy being bolstered in Pisces by a Pisces moon along with Neptune squaring Venus. And then on the 24th, Venus will hit that opposition with Jupiter. So I would that's why I was saying I would be remiss if I didn't cover the tail end of two sets of T squares, moon in Virgo being part of the first one, Neptune right in the middle being part of the middle one around the full moon, and then the one on the end here. So let me break those down and give you some postcards with dates in part two. But just looking at these charts, you can tell Gemini 2019 is big. All right, so this is the part where I give some interpretations and hopefully help organize it for you and explain it in a way that's helpful to you. So we start with what the sun sign is. So it's going into Gemini. This is our mutable air sign. And when we talk about Gemini, here are some of the qualities. We talk about curiosity. It's mutable, so it is adaptable and flexible. And things that Gemini is particularly good at are technology, change. If you know a Gemini well, you know they get bored easily. So they're always interested in news, data, information, new technologies. What's the latest gadget? This kind of thing. Usually they're news junkies. But again, they're also very sociable. So, and they're that flexibility, easily change plans if things, don't go the way that they were intended. Their ability to adapt is excellent. So we can learn a lot from them. There are three major themes that I see this cycle. One key planet to watch is, of course, Neptune, because that started with the sun going into Gemini when we had that Neptune trine to the north node. The second and the most important is the T squaring that's going to happen with the mutable signs, and that is just massive. And then the third, of course, is this building to a huge, all the cardinal signs, or I shouldn't say all the cardinal signs, Cancer and Capricorn signs and placements really activating that cardinal grid, because what those two are doing impacts the Aries and Libras, the other cardinals, and that 18-degree thing. So let's cover each of those. As you guys know, I've been telling you that the North Node in Cancer in this year has a lot of significance. It's pointing towards how we take care of each other, ourselves, issues from childhood or children, and home, all those Cancerian family issues. And the North Node is kind of moving us towards where we're headed, as we, lay out our future. It is getting a nice trine from Neptune, one of the big outer three. And this is, of course, following that Pluto opposition, and then the first of our three Saturn oppositions. So this cycle we get kind of a supportive angle, and Neptune likes to dissolve things and heal things. It's home in Pisces, which looks at things holistically. So we're talking about helping us resolve things and break down boundaries and that kind of thing in this mutable mix. So that's the North Node. We'll put that to the side right now because it's not going to get activated again until we get into the next cycle, and that's going to be the second Saturn opposition. Biggest story really this cycle are those T squares. I just need to tell you guys, if you are a Gemini, a Virgo, Sag, or Pisces, this is you. Those guys are saying, things are about to change. If you've been looking for things to change or to make big changes, you're going to be supported. A lot of those choice points are really going to come up during this cycle. And if that's not your favorite thing, that'll be a little challenging. But this is definitely the time, and you'll notice people with especially around those degrees 18, 20, 22, even as far early as 15, 17, just a big time. And that's why I was saying, even if you're not a mutable, pull up your chart. We all have areas that are going to be impacted because of the angles these mutable aspects create with our chart. So very important. And for us to have two sets of T squares right in the middle of just a massive, our second Jupiter Neptune square, is really big. So the central thing in there, that Jupiter Neptune square, that is about excess. So when we get Jupiter, we're always talking about where we overdo, overspend, things like that. So it's really important, where we may have been doing anything in excess, overeating, doing other substances. This can create a lot of, obviously these things all have impacts. And so these squares, talk about that, and they're trying to help us rein it in. And what I find really interesting around that is the next, 2 days later, we get that Saturn sextile to Neptune. And Saturn is all about restriction. And Saturn says, this is the structure. These are the rules. Like, this is the limit. Again, just be careful, because we're having 3 of these Jupiter Neptune squares this year. We had the first one in January, and we're also having 3 Saturn sextiles to Neptune. So again, Neptune, key figure throughout this cycle and throughout this year. So one is saying, it's really crazy, let's get really crazy. That's Jupiter being excessive. Neptune and Pisces can get way out there and way delusional, and go along with it, because who doesn't love a party? Problem is, reality sets in, and that's Saturn, and Saturn's traveling very closely with Pluto in the sign of reform, and Capricorn is also the sign of the rules, and they're trying to be supportive. That's not a bad angle. That's actually the sextile, which is helping us out. It's the squares that can get us into trouble, or at least show us where we may be getting into trouble. And I guess just to accent that, with Venus at the very end of the cycle, of this sun cycle, coming up to square Neptune and oppose Jupiter, it's just kind of putting a fine point on it and saying, well, did you get the lesson? Did you get the message? I asked nicely June 8th, and then I just gave you a big old square around the full moon, and you're still not getting it. So end of cycle, it's just really emphasizing. So mutable people, either hide or get ready. Get ready for some pretty sweeping changes and things to shift. And that can, again, be a very positive thing if things have been on hold and we're all in all that Pisces energy for a long time. If you're ready for things to get moving, Gemini is one of our outgoing male polarity signs. So it is about moving things forward. And of course, all of the cardinal energy, which is point number 3 that I want to make sure I include here, is about new beginnings. So there's this transition, all the mutable energy, squares, mutables finish their cycles, prepare us for the new. And then we also at the same time have all this cardinal energy saying push comes to shove here, or you're needing to get this started. And so all that tension all along that Cancer versus Capricorn axis is in the offing as well. And so we're talking about the issues that I've been talking about probably since the Aries video, if you want to look back at that, and I've been blogging about that with regard to the North Node. So we just have a tension between the institutions and the care, and North-South Node there on one side, Pluto and Capricorn on the other, Mars and Mercury. And in this case, Mercury getting ready to go retrograde in Cancer. So we're just going to keep kind of dealing with those things again: home, care, family, children, those issues are really big. And of course, this is the natal chart of America. America is a Cancer. For those that don't know, America's sun sign is Cancer, July 4th. That's never clicked for someone. That is, and our Pluto is, ready to have its own homecoming. That's quite a few degrees away still, about 5 degrees away. We're coming to our Pluto return. So, and definitely I'm not going to take it into political realms in these videos, but I just want you guys to know those are really big cycle for the mutable signs and for the cardinal signs. And the other aspect that I will not have time to cover here, but I will do some blogging on it, is the quincux element, because with so many things in Gemini, and so many things in Cancer, they are making interesting angles to Jupiter and Sag, and to, of course, all the planets in Capricorn. So we have a lot of the quincux energy. I explained that in one of the other videos, but I'll vlog about it and help you see that. But we're getting ready, being prepared to bring in and then deal with a lot more of the Cancerian energy, not only during the cycle, but when the sun goes in there. You saw it was a beginning of the shadow of the next retrograde of Mercury, and it's preparing us for that solar eclipse on July 2nd. Big aspects, which are again part of the whole Capricorn Cancer thing that happens all year long, and the North and South Node, and Saturn and Pluto doing their thing. So just all in context, we're just talking about a big cycle that's leading us into the following one. And of course, this is all kind of working in tandem, but it's really important for you to get your chart and see where this is going to be impacting you, but also to have just the heads up about that. I don't think it's going to be your chatty kind of general Gemini cycle. This one's much bigger. It just, because of that Neptune influence and the fact that it's a square that Neptune's creating with a lot of this, and Jupiter's involved, of course, exaggerating things. I think it's going to be much, much bigger than usual. That's kind of what I wanted to cover with us. Let me get to the resources. All right, you guys. Well, I am Elizabeth from Elizabeth's Oracle. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I hope that you find this information helpful. You can subscribe to this channel by just clicking, the little subscribe button and the bell. You get notifications each month when these come out. If you'd like more astrology news, there are a few options. One, feel free to go over to my site. It's listed in the description box. It is elizabethoracle.co, and you can sign up for a free newsletter. Your information is always kept confidential and respected. The do unto others rule is what I apply to social media and all of that. And I've been visiting my friend Kristina Walsh on her show, Surfing the Psychic Waves. We did a spring equinox show where we're talking about more of this, and we just did a show for Beltane, and we compared kind of the wheel of the year, the pagan year calendar, with the astrological correspondences, and we dove a little further into some of the 2019 astrology, so you can listen to that anytime. The links for those shows are also in the description box. If you would like to get a reading and help support my work, I'd really appreciate it. There is the Free Minute Friday special, so if you'd like to order a reading on a Friday, you get 5 free minutes. It's a great way, like just intro to try the site and try my service. Get a little extra value for that. And I'm trying to think. I think that is about it for announcements. But again, feel free. That was the other thing. My blog. I have been blogging more in 2019. I just told myself I was going to try it and see how it went. And I'm enjoying writing. And there's just stuff like the quincunxes in this cycle that I just can't get to in the video. It's just the videos become too long and hard to edit. And there's just, I know Gemini likes variety, but holy cow, this cycle is big enough all by itself. So I have to go into all those things, but I will add some blog posts about that. And I'm keeping up with the series on the North Node. So just feel free. Again, the blog posts are always in the sidebar if you're on a PC. And then if you're looking at my site from your phone or a tablet, just scroll to the bottom and you see the latest blog entries there. Otherwise, I will be back when the sun goes into Cancer. And again, really, thank you guys so much. I'm not out here buying followers or trying to create the biggest, audience or anything like that. I just, I really love to connect with people. And it's just really nice to see a lot of you regulars in the newsletter community and in, that we have some regulars watching here. So thank you so much. It's an honor and a pleasure to research. I really love looking at all this stuff. I got a lot of Virgo in my chart that always wants to know. And, and then I enjoy presenting. So thank you again so very much. And share it with other people if you like it. And we'll catch you when the sun goes into Cancer and the year really gets as if it could get any more interesting. All right, it will. And we'll see you then. Thank you so much.